My support for Senate Bill 349, an act concerning the possession of a small amount of marijuana. This bill, if passed, would put Connecticut on course for having a sensible drug policy that produces a long-term solution to reducing drug abuse harms in Connecticut. Drug laws are intended to create a society where drug abuse is lessened and the harm to society reduced. Jimmy Carter once said, "Penalties against possession of a drug should not be more damaging to an individual than the use of the drug itself, and where they are, they should be changed." Nowhere is this more clear to me than in the laws against possession of marijuana in private for personal use. This came out in 1977. Over 30 years ago, he knew our drug policies would be damaging to our country, and by the current situation of overcrowded prisons, overworked police forces, and sheer volume of wasted money, we see that it is well beyond time to change Connecticut's drug policy. Our current drug policies actively inhibit our ability to train and retain qualified individuals by derailing young people when they need the most support during their educational career. Students who are arrested for possessing small amounts of marijuana are not only subject to criminal penalties, but are also subject to high school or university penalties such as suspension, invasive drug tests, loss of ability to engage in extracurricular activities, loss of financial aid, and possibly even expulsion. This situation creates the worst kind of double jeopardy. Students receive punishment from both the state legal system and then again by the state educational system for the same crime, with the possibility of being denied the ability to receive an education for simply possessing a controlled substance. This can be seen in the Higher Education Act's federal financial aid penalty, which one of my colleagues will explain in depth after I am done speaking. And by using access to education as a punishment, we are denying our next generations the ability to become productive members of the Connecticut community. Because our state legal system has such harsh punishments for marijuana offenses, our educational systems also use overly harsh punishments, basing these policies largely on state law. By impeding on the ability of young people to get an education, you're impeding on their ability to increase their socioeconomic status, and therefore impeding on their ability to become a productive member of society. To give you a more specific example, as a member of the Yukon community, our college paper reports that numerous students are arrested for possession of marijuana every day. Today, and as a matter of fact, there's 5 marijuana possessions listed in the paper today. And that's dozens of students a week that were previously on track who are now spending their study time in courtrooms, drug testing facilities, or looking for a new place to live. This methodology also trickles down to the high school level. Students are forced to endure suspensions of over a month for simple possession charges. These students ages 13 to 18 become isolated from their support structures and can quickly enter a downward spiral at a critical juncture in their lives. Suspending them for such unreasonable lengths at a time when building social ties is so important does significantly more harm than good. Our current policies are taking nonviolent young people out of the academic environment and introducing them to a world of real addicts, hardened criminals, rapists, and murderers. Are these the types of people we should be exposing our impressionable young minds to, or should we be finding ways to reduce the harm of drug use while encouraging students to stay in school and better themselves? The punishments associated with our current drug laws are what lead many towards a criminal activity, not the drug use itself. By changing these laws, as Senate Bill 349 would, our educational institutions can rework their punishment guidelines and instead focus on keeping students in school where they can remain on the path to success. We cannot afford to lose potential leaders in our communities in an effort to make a political statement. Drug prohibition simply does not reduce the actual use of drugs and only magnifies its negative effects on society. At least 12 other states have passed similar legislation with countless benefits to their community. We have the ability today to change this detrimental policy and continue to be a national example in creating the leaders of tomorrow. I strongly urge every member of the judiciary to think of how current policies will affect the future generations of Connecticut and vote to change them for the better by voting yes on Senate Bill 349. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. And it sounds like you already knew, but I didn't mention it, that for the public testimony, we ask members of the public to keep their testimony under 3 minutes. Otherwise, you would hear a bell, but you didn't hear a bell. So
right, I was kind of waiting for it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And that is not because we're trying to cut people off, but because we want to make sure that there's enough time for everybody to testify and for members to ask questions. And I only have one for you. You indicated that there are, you said something and it went kind of fast for me, that 12 states do what?
Have passed similar decriminalization legislation.
At the 1 ounce or less level?
Yes.
Okay, do you happen to have a list of them?
I can provide you for it. I don't have it in front of me, but I can easily provide it for you if you like it. Sure.
That would be very helpful.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions? Representative Cotu.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for coming and testifying today. We appreciate it. What you're saying sort of troubles me to think that on college campuses, 1 ounce would be okay I guess somewhat, and it'll be a fine as much as you could get for a parking fine or speeding fine on campus. And I'm not sure exactly if this would, I know it'd be state law, but how it would affect on campuses. It concerns me to hear the way you're justifying it and linking it up to that this results in a downward spiral, because I personally think there's no benefit of doing drugs, and if you're on that path, even if you're doing marijuana, it can result in a lot of negatives at a young age or any age, and a lot of college students are younger. And I was a college student too, so it definitely makes me think about this a little bit differently, but I appreciate your input. Do you feel there's a lot of people on the campuses doing marijuana, or in your view?
Yes, I would say a significant portion of the entire population of America uses marijuana. So I would say that the harms associated with using marijuana are significantly less than the harms associated with the punishment for marijuana. So the students that are having most effect are no longer on campus because they've been removed from the educational environment for having an arrest for this particular offense. So I would think that reducing the penalties that are associated with it are actually going to be able to reduce the harm to our society associated with drug use itself. By having a situation where we can provide counseling for students instead of removing them from the #1 primary way that they receive an education on how to be a sensible member of society, this will allow students to become respectable members in the future and not derail them before they even have the opportunity to engage in civic duty and things like that.
Well, I'll just say that if one is involved with any type of drug activity, including marijuana, to me that's derailing your future no matter what, even if it's a minimal amount. I mean, there's nothing beneficial to doing drugs. So it's unfortunate to hear that, in your view, there is quite a few people taking in this type of activity, but we got to be realistic, and we know that's happening. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you testifying, and thank you, Chairman.
Anything further? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.